Hello, my name is Seth Snow and welcome back to All the Senses, a channel where we invite questions and welcome curiosity. On last week's episode, I gave you a little glance at what this channel is here for. We talked about how important and really cool our senses are and how they allow us to perceive, interact with, and explore our universe. If you haven't seen that video yet, I'll link it below so you can watch that first. If you have already, then stay tuned because we're diving in deeper in this video. So, see you on the other side of this title page.
I live very close to an airport, and that means that when planes take off, I can hear the loud roar of the planes from my bedroom. And there are a lot of planes that fly over us. You would imagine that this would be quite disturbing and annoying to myself and my family. But in reality, it's actually not that disturbing. Don't get me wrong, when we initially moved into the house, it was almost unbearable for me. But after a few weeks, I barely noticed them anymore. Not because the number of planes or the sound from them reduced in any way, but because of this tiny part of the brain called the reticular activating system, or the RAS.
All of our senses, apart from the sense of smell, are wired to the RAS. This means that the RAS is in charge of the amount of sensory information that our brains process on a daily. It's like a filter for our brains. It tells our brains which information to process and which information to ignore. And obviously this is very important because without it, our brains would be overstimulated constantly. The thing is, this is guided by what we have chosen to pay attention to. So back to the thing with the planes. After hearing the plane sounds for so long and probably concluding that this was unimportant or undesirable, my RAS took note of that and started to filter it out so I wouldn't notice the plane sound as often. However, my 1-year-old nephew, he notices the planes fly over our house every time and he always points it out, almost like he's seeing it for the first time. I think he notices everything because their brains are literally wired that way so that they can soak up as much information as possible in order to function in this new life. So unlike me, instead of perceiving the sound as annoying or unimportant, he's able to find joy and excitement through something that would ordinarily be considered as mundane, like a plane flying over your house. Just by paying attention, he's able to elevate his experience of life because he's noticing life like it's the first time. Which he said he is because he's a 1-year-old. But what if we adopted this perspective in our everyday life? What if we looked at life like it was the first time and paid attention to everything that surrounds us? We tend not to notice our daily interactions with the world because, as I explained earlier, our brains are constantly filtering out information to enable us to function. So we typically don't notice our sensory experiences, at least not until something goes wrong. For example, when we get a cold and we can't breathe or eat or taste properly, it feels like the worst thing in the world. I don't know about you guys, but whenever that happens to me, I tend to start regretting all the times that I didn't pay attention or appreciate the ease with which I used to do those things. So why do we wait until something goes wrong to start paying attention? Of course, the RAS is important because you can't possibly process every single thing in our surroundings. Our brains need to function. I'm not asking anyone to start pointing out planes wherever they go, but like my nephew taught me, there's a joy and an excitement to be gained from paying attention. Or at least changing our perspective of what we consider important or important to pay attention to. We don't have to wait until something goes wrong because there's a deeper and more holistic understanding of our world that can be gained through paying attention. I don't think I fully understood this until I started meditating. Meditating has become a really important practice in my life because what it does is encourage me to be still and present with my mind, body, and soul. Or in other words, fully engage with all of my senses. It's the perfect recipe for learning to pay attention. You see, our minds are in constant motion. At any given moment, we are either ruminating on the past or worrying about the future. It's not really our fault though, because this is how our society is organized. We are socialized to be in constant motion and attached to a fear of being left behind. So being still and present is not something we're used to. The funny thing is, the only thing that can slow down the mind is paying attention to the present, because the present is the only thing that really exists. The past doesn't really exist, It has passed, literally. Same goes for the future. It is yet to come. So if we really want to experience the reality around us, we need to cultivate the quality of noticing or paying attention to the present. When I started meditating though, I started to pay more attention. I would notice things like the way the sunset colors the clouds in the sky, or plants closing their leaves at night as if to go to sleep. Even subtle shifts in my own internal world. Before then, I had no idea how much was really going on in my mind, in my body, and my environment. So this is where it gets really fun, because when I started paying more attention, I got more curious. It was like my sense of awe and wonder about the world was reignited. Almost like I started seeing through the eyes of a child again. For example, it's one thing to eat food and maybe enjoy the food. But when we start paying attention, we connect the mind, body, and soul.
We start to perceive reality more vibrantly and holistically. It's a grand experience to really take in the color and the texture of the food as you prepare and eat it. We can also think about the people whose hands contributed to the growing of this food and the journey from its starting point to your plate. We get curious about its origins and how the people that started to grow and farm these foods came up with the idea of the meal. It's how the meal can open a door to a culture and an understanding of the natural life that exists through that culture. You can feel what it's doing in your body and how your body feels eating the food. You think about how eating food can be a form of pleasure and a medium for building and preserving community. It brings people together.
When we start to engage all our senses and get curious about how everything interacts with everything, that is where true holistic exploration of the universe begins. Regardless of our level of attentiveness or consciousness of our senses, it is through them that we have always experienced the world. It is through them that we understand the world, and it's through them that we evolve. I think the least we can do is pay attention.